My project is based around facilitating mastery of specific areas of composition for music students with relationship to improvisation, and facilitating research and practice of notation in composition by using notation software as part of this unit in my curriculum. For this would be using two specific sets of software. The first one is found through risingsoftware.com. These are Auralia 5, which is meant to help students learn how to orally understand notes related to one another or the relationship of notes between one another. And Musician 5, which is a music theory software designed to help young people understand what those notes look like on the staff. Once they've mastered this software, we begin moving into software created by Avid, which is called Sibelius, which is a digital engraving software, which is meant for composition, and it enables students to be able to freely compose in a perfect way, in an imperfect way, making any number of decisions that they want. But the purpose of starting with Rising Software, starting with Auralia and Musician, is to get young people to a place where they feel a comfort working within the notational software before they actually begin working on things related to individual compositions. So let us begin to take a look at what it is that Auralia and Musician has to offer. Rising Software's Auralia and Musician programs, these are things that can be utilized at home so long as you have access to the internet. You can play it on your phone, you can play it on a laptop, but in class, what we'd want to do is we'd want to have people working together. They could choose to work individually, but if students are working together in groups, they could help determine what sounds accurately make up the written pitches or the sounds that they're hearing. They have the opportunity to be able to hear examples of the questions. And to be able to make their choices. And they can do this in conversation with one another. So, for instance, if you get the correct answer, what they'll do is they'll be able to show you what the notes are as they're represented on the screen. And if you get it wrong, you'll have a chance to retry the answer and be able to talk with one another about what it was that made the answer wrong, or why they thought that the person should have chosen one answer over the other. On the opposite end of the spectrum, for something that is not just about ear training, you have things that are actually written for them. So in the Musician software, you have the scales actually being written out, and you have to identify by sight whether or not the things we've discussed in class, the way we've built scales, thinking about scales as being written space line, so this note in a space, this note on a line. Without skipping any steps, we have to be able to determine whether or not these things are what make up a scale. And again, once you submit your answer, it'll give you an opportunity to see whether or not you got the answer right or whether or not you got it wrong, and you can try again and go into discussion with one another about why we chose that answer. I'm conscious that not all music learners hear music the same way, specifically not in their formative years, but that's what the group work is supposed to be about. In an article published by the Georgia Institute of Technology from the EduTech Institute College of Computing, they state how problems should promote conjecture, they should promote argumentation and pure criticism by lending themselves to multiple interpretations or solutions, sometimes depending on which of a variety of conflicting perspectives students take on. The intuition here is that collaboration and collaborative learning will work best if students have something to work out together and if they have an authentic need to ask each other to justify their points of view. This is all an instance of problem-based learning meeting case-based reasoning. As the students' work begins to take shape, I'll be able to track all of their individual progress or progress in groups by assessing the data that comes into me as their administrator.
So this is the administrative page here. So let's go to, you wanted to set up syllabus. So syllabus you would select here, and you would decide what you want out of all these things. So here's elementary. You could decide middle school. It gives you a different set of things. and you decide what you want within this section. And then your people, if I was to, let's look at one of my classes. So here's a class. All the kids are here, and you set them up originally, and you give them their name and username, and I have everybody with the same password. That's Joanna, so don't look at her. So everybody has music. That way it's easy, no one forgets it, right? And I just do it. It's just like I had you, first initial, last name. And then, so that's people. And then under the practice, again, these are the things that we have. So let's just go right, and then the tests, again, you can set things up. Oh, I didn't want to do that. So you're setting things up here. You're deciding what you want per class, how many times or how many attempts that they can have. Allow tests to be resumed later. You can decide that. I think that's important. If they get halfway through it, they can come back to it. So show correct and incorrect feedback. They want that. They need to be able to review their entries. So you decide what you want them to see under each category. So it's quite specific there. And then reports. This is where you get all the cool data.
We're now inside Avid's Sibelius notation software. Once they've established comfort with using notation software specifically designed to offer immediate feedback about note choices, the limits of what they can write will be taken off as they transition into working with notation software meant for composition. This time in the unit is purposefully created to be a space without boundaries, where they'll only be guided by their ears and previous understandings of how to build scales and create music within the framework of specific key signatures to guide their compositional choices, which can range from being very simple to very complex. These opportunities together have their ideals cradled and anchored in instruction. In 1990, the Technician in Cognition group at Vanderbilt published a 1990 article with the American Education Research Association where they describe what I hope this section of exploration in the curriculum will yield, where, quote, "We attempt to create environments that permit sustained exploration by students and teachers and enable them to understand the kinds of problems and opportunities that experts in various areas encounter and the knowledge that these experts use as tools." So here they'll be able to choose any kind of instrument that they want. So let's say for our purposes here, I want to use piano. I'll add that to our score. They'll need to know things about how to create a time signature, which will have come before we start working the software. And they will need to identify what key signature it is that we'll be working in. We will have an enabling constraint. We'll start with a major key, and we'll start with B flat major since that's something that is easily attained by wind and brass players alike who are transposing, or a lot of them are transposing instruments, and string players who are also beginning. This is probably one of the more doable key signatures for them to be able to work with anyway. So you see that once this is up, they will now have range to be able to use any notes that they wish to place notes on the staff and be able to build it so that they can get immediate feedback from MIDI about what their scale sounds like. So they'll know whether or not they're in the range based off of the work they will have done in Auralia and in Musician. Once they've gotten to the point where they have already learned through the notation software how to build scales, once they've gotten to the point where they've been able to pull from the sharing space all of the MIDI files, all of the musical, instrumental, digital interface files that can be manipulated through pitch so they can begin to identify whether or not certain notes are actually belonging to their key signature, they then will have access to all of the individual compositions so that they can be played either individually, or you can choose multiple ones at the same time and begin to see how the compositional choices affect one another.